Wella raga, come state ragazzi? How's it going, everybody? Let's fix the camera here. All right, today we've got another video in English. We're going to talk about the Italian American dialect, as I like to call it. So let's give a little bit of background, what this is, why we're talking about it. All the words that we're going to be covering today are in the title, okay? So I'm not going to have any text coming up on the screen. And there's two reasons for this. One reason is, as I've said in the past in some other videos, I kind of dislike editing. I'm not really into it as I used to be. Second reason is I really enjoy making live videos. I love the performative aspect. I love that you've just got one shot, go out there and do it, you know? And third reason is, these words are not taught in a formal context. When you're learning these Italian American dialect words, you're learning them just hearing them in giro. You're learning them just around. And right now in my graduate program, I'm preparing a presentation on Italian American dialect and talking about immigration and Southern Italian dialects and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be a great idea to share some of these words with you guys here today live on YouTube. So we're going to talk about 5 words from Italian American slang, New York Italian slang, 5 words from the Italian American dialect. As this is nothing standard, there is no one way of describing these. I like the word dialect, but it's going to depend on you. These may be very regional as well, hence why I say the word New York. Okay, so let's begin with the first one, which is Maron. Maron. Okay, and this should be interesting also for my Italian-speaking audience that wants to learn a little bit more about stuff in America, regionalisms, the Italian-American experience. So I think this will be useful for everybody. All right, so let's begin with Maron. Maron. Okay, Maron you can hear in Italy, particularly in a place like Naples, for example. A lot of these are from Napoletan, Sicilian, we often call it, or Sicilian. So Napoletano, Siciliano. So Maron, you could hear in Naples, for example. I'm most familiar with Neapolitan. I have my Neapolitan video linked down below. And someone just said in the chat, sarebbe Madonna. Sarebbe Madonna. So yeah, facciamo imparare. Oh no, that's a comment for they're writing to each other in the chat. Anyway, so Maron comes from Madonna. Now, usually, how do we use this? It's kind of like a good grief, holy crap, damn, dang it. It's a word that you use in that kind of situation. So, for example, a lot of these are often used in a negative context, and there is a reason behind it, and even some science behind it. There are some studies behind it. I heard of a 2019 study, I believe it was, but there are plenty of others. And if I find that study after filming this video, I'll link it down below in the description. There was a study that was done on Chinese and English speakers. So I think they were Chinese American, as we often use that kind of terminology, just like we use Italian American. So people born in China moved to the US. And the study found that in moments of distress or strong negative emotion, particularly negative emotion, these Chinese Americans would more likely default to Chinese to express that swear word or that great frustration rather than English. We see this all across the board in any linguistic group you could think of. So keeping it to Italy, for example, you may find a lot of Italians default to a regional language or dialect word in moments of great frustration, or when just needing to explain something with a certain specificity that standard Italian just can't give you. And that is very much the same thing when we're talking about the Italian American dialect. It may feel so much more authentic for some people to say, Maron, look at this guy. Maron, what are you doing? You're giving me Ajida, which is another one we'll be looking at. It just hits, as the kids say. It just hits different. It hits differently. It gives you a different punch. So Maron is like, dang it, good grief, my goodness. And it comes from Madonna, which is used in Italy, just as Maron or Maronna mia is used in Naples to mean Madonna mia. I don't know if we're entering into bestemia category. Bestemia is blasphemy. So it is a category of Italian swear words that is used for uh, things against the church, things against God. So it's a rather not as appropriate area of language as one could imagine. So, you wouldn't want to be using this walking into a bar in front of someone in Italy just because you stubbed your toe or you hit your head against the wall accidentally. I don't know. And you go, oh, Maron. I don't know. I don't know if you want to go yelling, Maronna mia. I don't know if you really want to go doing that. However, that's what it means. So in my family, we always had a combination of English, Neapolitan, Italian, a little bit of Italian American. So I heard Maron, but in my family, it was a little more Maronami. Maronami. Now, what is some history behind this, or perhaps some more of an explanation I could give you about the pronunciation, why it's written Maron, and it comes from Madonna, meaning Mary, as in Mary, the mother of God. In Neapolitan, it is very common to turn your D's into R's. I like to call it you roll your D's. So it's very common to say things like Maron when you're saying Madonna. Or another expression would be dentro. Instead of saying dentro in Napoletano, dentro meaning inside, we often say rind, rind. So rind using an R instead of dentro. You could say dentro, but rind. Rindogora. Rindogora means inside your heart. I think it comes from a song, if I'm not mistaken. Lyrics like that I'm sure you can find dappertutto nella musica. You can find everywhere in language. But anyway, rindogora, rindevene. I think that's what it is. Rindevene from the song Caruso di Lucio Dalla, which goes Te voglia bene assai, ma tanta bene assai, the song like that. I think he says, è una catena ormai che scioglie sangue rindevene assai, or dindevene. Depending on the singer, depending on the version, what have you. But rind means inside. So rindogora, rindevene, inside of the vein. Okay. So there you go. That's Maron. Maron is like, oh, dang, what is this? Look at that guy, Maron. Okay. Who does he think he is? Maron. Then we have Agida. Agida. Now, Agida, as far as I have been able to find out, as far as I know, Agida doesn't exist in Italian or in Neapolitan or in regional languages and dialects. I think this may just be a purely Italian American thing. Agita is essentially stress. And the funny thing is, in Italy today, we use the word stress. So they use the English word. So mi stai dando tanto stress. You're giving me a lot of stress. But in the more Italian American New York style, we would say agita. You're giving me so much agita. It's when you're feeling the acido, okay, the acidità che sale. You're feeling the acidity that's coming up. So you could tell someone, stop it, stop yelling, you're giving me agita. Or the way you're behaving, you're irritating me so much, it's making my stomach churn and I'm feeling like I have acid reflux, You're giving me agita, stress. It's like that, agita. So sort of like agitare. Agitare is to agitate. To agitate in the sense of someone is getting agitated emotionally, or you're agitating something. I don't know why I think like a container of water, of a liquid, and you're turning it from side to side to agitate the liquid. That's agitare. Okay, let's also talk about stunad. What is a stunad? Okay, so a stunad comes from stonato. Now, stonato is an Italian word. Stonato means to be out of tune. Out of tune. So tonato means to be in tune. So if someone is singing stonato, in maniera stonato, they're tone deaf, essentially. They're out of tune. They're not singing properly. And so if someone's not singing properly, it may sound bad. So if we kind of wrap this up in a sense, like wrap it all up into a nice little present and put a bow on top, how could we arrive at this idea of stop being such a stunad? That guy's such a stunad. He doesn't know what he's doing. That's stunad, stunad. You kind of behave like that. Yet again, strong negative emotion. We're using these dialect words. More likely than not. Doesn't mean it's always, but it's very common. A stunad is essentially an idiot, a stupid person, someone who's foolish. So you can tell someone stunad. I told you. What were you expecting? Stunad. Maron. Look at this stunad. Okay. So there we go. Stonato. This, I believe, is in fact used in Napoletano. Yeah, like is stonat. Is stonat. Yeah, is means he. In Napoletano, instead of saying lui, we say is or isso. Is stonat. Cosa t'aspetta? Is stonat. Is non sab. Which means he doesn't know. Is non sa, is non sab. In my family, famiglia, in my family, we said sab, but I think in modern Napoletano, we say is non sa. Is non sa. So, cool, right? Stunad. From stonato. Now, the next one we have is a scutch. Scutch. Interestingly enough, I wanted to research this one because I feel I've heard people say to scutch on someone. To scutch on someone could be to like rat them out. But I haven't found anything online where people use it in this way. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know if that's just something I heard in my experience. Don't know. However, scutch, generally speaking, means a pest, someone that's a nuisance, someone that's a bother. So if you're annoying me, I'm like, just stop being such a scutch. Okay? You're such a scutch. It could also imply a sly person, a clever, cunning kind of person. So yeah, like stop being such a scutch. You're really annoying me. You're such a scutch. It's just that kind of smart alecky, annoying, pestery kind of person. Now, scutch comes from scocciare in Italiano. I remember when one of my students made this breakthrough during one of our group lessons. As always, if you ever want to learn more about them, I've got a link down below in the description. I just taught one on conversation today. Tomorrow we're doing ne and double object pronouns at the time of filming this video. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So one of my students said, hey, is scutch from scocciare? Because I taught the expression mi scoccia. If something mi scoccia, it irritates me. Like maybe I'm wearing something like, no, ma mi scoccia. Or emotionally, no, mi scoccia farlo. Mi scoccia. Mi scoccia is it irritates me. It bothers me. I don't want to do it. For some reason, scocciare, I just feel like it's just kind of like on the skin. It's an irritant. And so one of my students was like, is that where scutch comes from? And it was a svolta epocale. It was a major breakthrough. I could not believe it. We then did some research looking into it. I said, Maron, to use the word. I didn't say that, but to keep it in theme of character for today, to keep it in character, Maronna mi, esiste. That's where it's from. So it's from scocciare. So they do not use scutch in Italian, in Neapolitan, in Southern Italian dialects. However, scocciare does really exist. Yeah, it does. So I think you could call someone a scocciatore, but I just don't like the way it sounds because I haven't heard it that often. It is possible it exists, but scutch is really an Italian American thing. Not to be confused with the English slang word scooch, to scooch over. When you're shimmying over, okay? Let's say you're all sitting like on some kind of bench. You're like, hey, could you just scooch over a little bit? Or let me scooch a little. Do we say they'll scooch a little closer to you? I'm drawing a blank as I'm thinking about scooch. So yeah, that's scooch. Now let's move on to the last Italian American dialect word of the day. We have Paisan. Paisan. Paisan, I think out of all of these, is the one that is closest to a standard Italian word, which is paesano. It's just written differently. I chose to write it the way that I think would make sense in English, Paisan. I don't know if Paesan would be as authentically English, but it's not a big deal, whatever. However you feel like writing it. Paisan means paesano. Paesano in Italian refers to someone who is a fellow countryman, because paese means country. However, paese is also used to talk about a village, so a small place. Villaggio is not really used. Obviously it exists, it can be used. You hear words more like borgo, if it's a small little like borgo medievale, a medieval village. Otherwise, we call it a paesino, Paesino is really common. So if you're from like a small farming village, maybe that's where your ancestors came from. Un paesino del sud, ad esempio, a paesino in the south. So we have paese, meaning country. Paese can also mean village or small town. And it could also be a paesino if you want to be even more specific, a small little village. So what would a paisan be? Not only a countryman, but a fellow townsman, someone who comes from your fellow village. So you could imagine how this word would get used in Italian American dialect. You're in a new country, you see a fellow paisan, and so you'd call it a paisan. It's sort of like bro, dude, man, my friend. It could kind of be like that in Italian American dialect. Paisan could be used in like a Neapolitan, let's say. I always keep talking about Neapolitan, as I mentioned at the top of this video. That's the language I'm most familiar with in southern Italy. So, uè, paisa. I would say it more like that. I don't believe it would have an N at the end. I would say, uè, paisa, come chiama? I would say in Napoletan. So, uè, paisa, come chiama? Which means, hey man, how you doing? Come chiama is how are we doing? We do that in English. You could do that in Italian. Hey, come andiamo ragazzi? Like, dai ragazzi, come andiamo? Like, how are we getting along? How's it going? How are we doing is the implication there. So yam, which might be another expression you're familiar with. Yamma ya. This is more Italian dialect versus or Neapolitan dialect, what have you, versus Italian American dialect. I don't think it's really Italian American yamma ya. I think that's more Italian language, that's more Neapolitan rather than like a slang and an anglicization, let's say, right? So, yeah. So yamma is from andare. And andiamo, let's go, would be yam. You may also have heard yamarinde, yamarinde, which means let's come inside. Yamarinda nonna. Maybe your grandmother said, like mine always did, yamarinda nonna, calling me to like come in to eat after playing outside. Yamarinda nonna, like let's come inside now. Come on, yamarinde, vieni a mangia, come and eat. Vieni a mangià. You could say mangià. My family did not say that, but that is very much a feature of Neapolitan. Mangià. You could say that, to eat. We said vieni a mangià. That was the way we tended to say it. So yeah, that has been our video on 5 Italian American dialect words with a little bit of Italian, a little bit of Napoletano, right? Seeing the connection to these words that they have to standard Italian, if we can find it, to Neapolitan, whenever we can find it. And yeah, and as I was saying, because I just want to close up again on that piece about the strong emotion. Anytime you find videos online or talk to people about these words they heard their Italian relatives using, or what a lot of us are just kind of aware of in New York, they tend to usually be negative emotions. And I understand that. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. What happens to me, if I have a strong negative emotion, I may want to say it in Italian. I may want to say it in dialect because it just has that punch. And I've come to see this to be the case also for other languages. When I speak French, French is not a native language of mine. It's not a heritage language of mine. However, anytime you learn a language, it becomes your own. It becomes a part of you, and you become a part of that people because you're taking on their culture. You're becoming a part of it when you learn that language. Just as well, just because a word, we may call it, or the title of this video is Italian American Slang, with languages, borders don't always exist. There's really not always going to be boundaries. If you're just from New York and heard these words, you may know what Ajida is, irrespective of your heritage. It doesn't have to be tied to heritage. Similar to when I'm in an Italian deli and I hear someone saying they want prosciutto or mortadella, or they want ricotta, mozzarella. That's a real normal local thing. You don't have to have grown up in an Italian neighborhood in the 1960s or 70s or something to have heard that, And that's what's so beautiful about language. Language is really, really cool. The deeper and deeper you get into it, you start uncovering all these kinds of things. Similar to me with my Italian studies, I am really interested in digging deeper into Italian American history, the dialect, the customs, where we are today with the culture, how it was in the past. It's just cool. And so the more time you spend with a language, the deeper you get into it, the more things you uncover and you start to see, wow, the joy that languages brings never ends. It never ends. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. I could go on and on, but we're going to close it up here. We can do another episode of this if you're interested. I've been meaning to do another episode of my Neapolitan series for a long time because I filmed that video years ago. I have it linked down below in the description. And I'll tell you what, in recent years, ever since I put out that video, I was never expecting it. That video really resonates with a lot of people. And that's because it touches something sincere about us, something intimate, something special. It's these sounds you heard from a grandparent, a parent, a great-grandparent in your neighborhood, that friendly person next door or down the road or the shop owner. It's something really special. And so that's why I'm happy to produce more content about this, because it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. All right, guys, always remember to spread the love. Hope you enjoyed. E ci vediamo alla prossima, va bene? As we would say in dialect, state buona, which means be well. State buona e ci verim rop, ok? See you later, ci verim. Ciao ragazzi, ciao, ciao, ciao.